And we're back with another week of Touchdown coming at you from Pointer's Bar and Restaurant in Vienna, Austria. I'm your host, Joel Turpin. With me are my co-hosts, Mark Bartman, Philly, Chris Burdett, Katie Eichhorn, and Dave Asselin. The one person who has bragging rights this week, as we'll get into.
Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, Miami, I guess, a little bit too. Came from last Thursday, but let's go on. Talk a little bit about last week, the highlights. The NFC West race kind of closed down to some extent as Arizona pulled out a 3 games in front by beating Detroit in a hard-fought game, while Seattle fell with a loss at Kansas City of 6-4. San Francisco stayed in the picture by beating the Giants 16-10. Meanwhile, the aforementioned Chiefs briefly pulled into a first-place tie in the AFC West with Denver, as Denver was shocked in St. Louis. Kansas City, of course, gave up that position by choking in Oakland last night to the Raiders, handing them their first win of the season. And despite that, I'm wearing my new Chiefs tie this week because my buddy Armin brought it all the way from Kansas City, so shout out to him. AFC North, another shakeup, another week where we switch positions as it seems to be every week. The Browns lost to Houston at home while Pittsburgh and Cincy won. Baltimore idle, so another crazy week in that division. Philly was embarrassed by Green Bay, and the Patriots destroyed the Colts in Indy to stay well ahead of Miami in the AFC East. Atlanta's win over Carolina vaulted them into a first-place tie in the horrific NFC South. Tampa Bay crushed Washington to cause controversy for RG3, with many speculating that his time may come to a close in Washington sooner rather than later. And the Vikings suffered a double blow as they both lost to the Bears and had Adrian Peterson suspended by the commissioner for the rest of the season. Now, let's take a moment, and does anybody want to weigh in on who took the biggest hit over the last weekend?
I'll jump in there. I think the biggest hit, as I see it, was the Seattle Seahawks. Already in a division where it looks like the Cardinals are going to win this division, but the wild card implications are still out there. Seattle losing this game last week, losing a tough one. Russell Wilson is down in every statistic this year except for rushing. If you rewind the tapes a few weeks back, I predicted him he will go down this year. The year's not over yet. There's still some tough games to play.
Bold prediction.
prediction.
Very bold prediction. And I'm going to stick with it because he's running the ball more and he's putting himself out there more. Marshawn Lynch is grumbling right now in Seattle. Why is he grumbling? I was talking with Chris about this at lunch earlier. Why is this guy grumbling? He's got a Super Bowl ring. He's with a good team. Grumbling. Locker room is down right now.
Show me the money.
And show me the money, exactly.
Didn't he just
Scheduling.
Go
ahead, I'm sorry.
He paid a really significant fine for refusing to
Talk to the media.
give post-game interviews.
$100,000.
Exactly.
$100,000 for that fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he needs to get paid more.
Yeah,
so
I
he doesn't
think
have to talk.
it's pocket change
So
for
true.
him, but still.
Yeah, but back on this division right now, I see Seattle. This is maybe a huge prediction or whatever. I see them not even making a wild card. They've got a huge schedule ahead of them. They're going to play Arizona. They're playing Arizona and San Francisco twice, both in the division. And in 2 weeks, they travel to Philadelphia to face Chris's mighty Eagles. And they are finishing with St. Louis at home. Now, we would laugh right now, but St. Louis has all of a sudden took it up a notch, at least defensively. So that game also isn't a gimme. They lose 2 of these upcoming games, mathematically, they're out of it. So I see the Seahawks as taking the biggest hit the last week.
What about you, Katie?
Yeah. Both emotionally and, as we talked about the AFC North, the biggest hit for me was the Browns, namely hits delivered by J.J. Watt. And what does this kid not do? He's receiving. I'm just waiting for him to kick a return to himself. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's got tackles. He's got sacks. And I'm grumbling about him, but he is impressive. And I think this is detrimental to the Browns emotionally. They do what the Browns always do, which is drop somebody quickly and rashly. Ben Tate is now gone. And there's discussion of all kinds of things. However, hope on the horizon. Josh Gordon is back this week, and maybe that can provide the little kick in the pants that my Browns need to come back from this loss. But I say, for both myself emotionally and for just the turmoil in our division, that this was a hard hit for us.
Mark?
Well, to me, it was the New Orleans Saints taking the biggest hit. In a very shaky NFC South, they had the opportunity to go first if they would have won against the 49ers. And in that NFC South, there is no spot available for a wild card for the second place team. So they are tied with Atlanta at the moment, but behind Atlanta. And I'm sure I wasn't here last week, but everyone, I'm sure, said, oh, Drew Brees at home, he'll win the game, and so on and so on. He didn't. And now he's playing at home again against Baltimore, and there is no room for error anymore. And I think that was a big mistake.
Huge.
Now you can go, Chris.
Well, I wanted to say that J.J. Watt makes the NFL look like a little high school football game. I mean, it's like ridiculous. But anyway, yeah,
Beast mode.
I'm going with the Denver Broncos on this. I mean, listen, they still only have 3 losses at the head of their division. But long term, the question is the expectation that they're going to make it to the Super Bowl, at least to the AFC Championship game. And they've just looked quite bad in the last 3 weeks. Peyton Manning has 6 interceptions in the last 3 games. That's 2 interceptions per game. The running game has come to a screeching halt. They ran for 28 yards last week, and they're banged up on the receiving, the tight end side of things. So, I think they'll get through. But at the same time, their stock in this game, which is the Super Bowl, has taken a bit of a beating there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's nobody happier right now on the Denver right now than seeing the loss last night by Kansas City.
We were happy until we went
Yes.
and choked it away in Oakland,
Exactly.
and now we basically lose all the tiebreakers, and our divisional chances pretty much went out the window there.
Yeah, and I think the question for me too with Peyton Manning is, for the longest time, the knock on him is his ability to finish a season, to be clutch down the end of the season, and get those guys into the Super Bowl. Gosh, it's kind of looking like a bit of a repeat at this point, kind of being weak at the end of the season, and let's see what happens.
I feel, mark my words, he will.
And,
Predictions come back.
Coming from
I
the
think you're
Barn
gonna
Man.
give us a little bit on Adrian Peterson as well.
Yeah, so as far as Adrian Peterson is concerned, Joel touched briefly at the beginning of the episode on this topic. Listen, the NFL came down really hard on him, suspended for the rest of the season. He must go through extensive counseling, and only if he shows enough progress on his counseling and enough remorse will he actually have a chance to be reinstated in April of 2015. They really came down hard on him. There was a message sent there. Listen, what you did to your 4-year-old son is not acceptable, obviously.
Thank you very much.
Was the amount of suspension a bit of a makeup call from the Ray Rice side of things? I think so. But at the same time, listen, from a message side of things and from the American public side of things, I think this has just gone a little bit too long, and that is the NFL players getting less concerns or less punishment for their bad deeds compared to what the American public is. It's a very, very public league. It's wildly successful. Last year, 34 out of the top 35 watched television programs in the United States of America were NFL football games. I mean, 17 of those were Philadelphia Eagles games, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that's a side part of it. But listen, we're coming down the stretch here. The tide's really changed. The commissioner's talking about it with the owners and the Players Association. They're moving down a path of making these NFL superstars get a little bit more trouble for what they've done to make it maybe a little bit more equitable from an American public side of things. To me, the thing to look at is what is the Players Association going to do? They tend to move slowly. They want to protect their players, but I think in the fairness of the players who aren't causing problems and really cleaning up the league, I think it's about time that they really take control of this, and I think this step forward with the Adrian Peterson suspension is a good thing.
The only question I had was it seemed a little bit like double jeopardy to me because he's been sitting out the entire season. Now, he's been getting paychecks, but I question why they didn't maybe offer, you could forfeit some paychecks and come back or something. But
I think this is definitely the overreaction on the NFL side of things. They wanted to be safe. I mean, listen, even the Vikings were going to put him back in until at the beginning of the season until the governor started complaining about it.
yeah,
And in the end, you're talking about being safe here. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration from the American public, and err on the safety side of things here.
No, they're going to make an example of him, and what more public figure could you make an example of in Minnesota?
And then the photos that he did,
Jesse Ventura.
and what you see at those photos are just a bad thing, and it's a PR side of things. Yeah.
Of course. Okay, well, we're gonna do something a little different this week. Gonna take some time out, and we're gonna do this in weeks going forward, discussing a particular position, either on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. And this week we're gonna start with tight ends, and we're gonna start by having Mark discuss the position a little bit and what it is, and then we're gonna talk about who we think the top tight ends in the game are today, and maybe some up and comers throughout the league.
Exactly. Today, the tight end, for years, it has probably been the most underrated position in the NFL, and only in recent years, coaches started to value the full potential and the options a tight end gives to the team. And the tight end is a unique position. Even though he's lined up right next to the O-line, he's not restricted to the 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, and that makes him a legal receiver. And on top of it, he's a good blocker too. The attributes a scout is looking for in a tight end, he's looking for a guy minimum 6'3" tall, weighing 250 pounds and running the 40-yard dash in 4.85 seconds. Now that makes a tight end every defense coordinator's nightmare. Why? There is no defense position that can physically match up with a tight end. The defensive linemen, they are too slow, the linebackers, they are too small, and the cornerbacks and the safeties, they are simply not strong enough. And we see it all the time that a tight end is dragging around 2 cornerbacks making some extra yards. So what does the NFL do? At the moment, they're looking for free safeties who are getting bigger and stronger to match up with the tight end. The tight end physical appearance makes it possible to use him in various positions as well. And if we take a look back in 2013, you probably remember Patriots Hernandez lining up in the backfield and doing some running backs jobs. Or San Francisco's tight end Vernon Davis lining up as a wide receiver, streaking down the sideline, catching long passes. That is very unique and a very cool thing for a tight end. There are just 2 more facts I wanted to mention. In 2015, 5 of the 15 players who had most receptions were tight ends, and 3 NFL teams in the history of the NFL actually have leading receivers as tight ends. And these are the Chiefs with Tony Gonzalez, the Baltimore Ravens with Todd Heap, and the Cleveland Browns with Ozzie Newsome. And more about the history of the tight ends, Joel will tell us.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the actual players at the position who have made a difference. It's very hard to kind of compare the really old era when they didn't really have a distinguished position, and even the kind of middle era of the 60s and 70s with the modern era. But we'll talk about it just a little bit here. I don't know if there's any position that has evolved as drastically on the football field as this has over the last 20 years or so. Again, as Mark pointed out, these guys are often used as blockers, sometimes blockers first and receivers second. And that still happens today on many teams, depending on the tight end's ability. But it's slowly transitioned more and more to the receiving ability throughout the years. I think the first one that really blew up in this area was Mike Ditka, who played for the Bears and also the Cowboys later in his career, and I think a year with Philadelphia even mixed in there. But his big years were with the Bears, and of course everyone knows him now as a coach for the Bears and the Saints later in his career. But when he was a tight end, he really just burst onto the scene. Just completely blew everybody away with 56 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 12 touchdowns in his Rookie of the Year campaign in 1961. And this is an era where those are good numbers for a wide receiver, much less a tight end. 3 years later, in 64, he had 75 receptions, which was a season record for tight ends until 1980. And that was, by the time they transitioned to 16 games. So that's really impressive. And of course, he even won a Super Bowl with the Cowboys after he moved over to that side. So something not many Bears from that era could talk about. In addition to him, you had a number of tight ends who made the Hall of Fame. These guys were primarily known as blockers, but also had some decent receiving stats. You had John Mackey for the Colts, Jackie Smith for the Cardinals, Charlie Sanders for the Lions, played from 68 to 77, Dave Casper for the Raiders from 74 to 84, and then a few more that I'm going to talk about as they started to transition into the modern era, the more modern era. Ozzie Newsome for the Browns, the Wizard of Oz. Newsome played in 198 consecutive games,
Amazing.
had 89 receptions, both 83 and 84, and caught at least one pass in 150 consecutive games.
Ooh.
Overshadowed on the pass catching side, however, from that exact era, Kellen Winslow of the Chargers from 79 to 87, 5-time Pro Bowler. And for me, this is kind of what I would term the missing link tight end. The guy that really, you've got the previous era and then you've got the modern era, and this guy really showed what a tight end could do at that position. His biggest, most memorable performance that everybody's going to remember is the playoff game against the Dolphins in 1981. The Chargers won 41-38 in overtime. He caught 13 passes for 166 yards, and he blocked a field goal with 4 seconds to play to send the game into overtime. This guy, if he hadn't had knee injuries, we might still be talking about him being the all-time leader in his position. He was that much better than the competition. But he still ended up with 541 receptions, 6,741 yards, and 45 touchdowns in just 9 seasons. After that, we had Shannon Sharp, as was mentioned by my colleague. Personally, cannot stand this guy.
Why?
Hate
Why,
him
yeah, why,
so
why
much.
is that, Joel?
He was a Bronco. Every time he played the Chiefs, I swear he would get like 200 yards. He would be open on every play. If we tried to tackle him, he'd just kind of shuck him off. I don't know how he didn't have like 1,800-yard seasons, really, from what I watched.
It felt like
It was-
1,800
yeah,
yards.
He was, and he was cocky, loudmouth. He was like a receiver. He was like Terrell Owens, but at the tight end position.
and marbles in his mouth.
Yeah, exactly. When he retired, he had pretty much all of the tight end records, 815 career receptions, 10,000 yards, 62 touchdowns, and 3 Super Bowls. But luckily, he was passed in all of those records by a touchdown Tony Gonzalez, future Hall of Famer, played for the Chiefs and then a few years at the end of his career for the Falcons. The first tight end to reach 15,000 receiving yards, 15,127 for his career. Career receptions for a tight end over 1,300, touchdowns 111. And when you start talking about him, you have to talk about him with the wide receivers to even have comparable players. Because when he retired, you're talking about how many receptions he had, second all time as a receiver of any sort, touchdowns. He's up in the lists all the way. Nowadays, of course, you got a couple of guys that we're going to talk about here on the panel who are maybe going to threaten some of those as their career comes down, depending, of course, on their resiliency. That was the thing. Tony just kept playing at a high level for a crazy number of years, which you can't really expect at that position, but we'll see how it happens. That's about it. I'll weigh in on my top tight end and stuff a little later on, but first we're going to send you down to Dave, who's going to kick that part of the discussion off.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about everyone's favorite right now, Gronkowski.
Everyone's
Everyone.
Dave speaks for all of us.
So, now let's be honest. Right now, at this moment, as we speak, probably he is the ultimate prototype of today's tight end. He's the
Dave said,
RoboCop.
be honest.
He is the RoboCop of tight ends, the $6 million man of tight ends.
So you mean he's missing limbs?
But he seems to rip them off defensive players on his way down the field.
Yeah.
True enough.
He's big, he's strong, he's very agile, and he's got fantastic hands. Not only that, it's hard to bring this guy down. Once he catches the ball, it's hard to bring him down. You see 2 or 3 guys dragging on him to bring him down. He loves playing the game. We see this. Belichick knows how to find this talent and use the most out of it. And we talked about Hernandez earlier, and I think actually it was Bill Belichick who brought out the double tight end scheme as we see football in the last 10 years. All that being said, in comparison with the great Tony Gonzalez, and all hats off to Tony, but in Tony's first 5 years, he has more TDs. He has 51 TDs, gentlemen, right now. 51. And he's only actually played about 4 years because he was out for about a year the last 2 seasons. He has 4,000 yards already. He has this is an incredible fact, he has 215 first downs. Your go-to guy on third down. And in his entire career, he's only fumbled the ball twice in 4.5 years of playing.
That is amazing.
That's just amazing.
I'm gonna beat that stat.
He's got 279 receptions already. He's well on pace, if he stays healthy, to blow Gonzalez out of the water, which I don't see happening.
Dave, are you,
Gonzalez was
are
a
you
god.
dating Rob Gronkowski? Or would you
Not
like
yet,
to?
not yet. But I expect him to see here at the new Dunkin' Donuts here right now. It's a spokesman for Dunkin'
It's a good
Donuts.
Boston,
New England
Boston
runs
boy.
New England runs on the Gronk. And did I also mention he's a fabulous blocker? And as you mentioned earlier, the tight end was mainly as a blocker, and it's only in the last few years they've actually developed these athletes. And he is a fabulous blocker downfield. The guy is huge. What are you going to do about this guy? Bill Belichick. There was a foul he had last week, and none of my colleagues saw it because it was a late night game. Of course, I'm not going to wait up for that one. Unless it's the Browns or the Eagles playing. But the guys that he actually kicked the guy underneath the camera because he was trash talking him all during the game. And Bill Belichick says he's an absolute beast that loves playing the game, and we witness this every Sunday. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's really hard to cover this guy. And be honest, is there a better tight end playing right now?
Yes, yes, there is.
And please, let me know. I will mention, though, I do see an upcoming tight end. It's you don't hear a lot about this guy. He was the top tight end drafted in this year's, in the 2014 draft. Eric Ebron, he's a Detroit rookie. 10th overall pick for the Lions. He plays in probably one of the most lethal receiving corps right now in the NFL. He's not getting the spotlight that you get from a Gronk or a Pettigrew, who's his teammate, because he plays behind Reggie Bush coming out of the backfield. Golden Tate, and Calvin Megatron Johnson. Keep an eye on this guy, Ebron, for the Detroit Lions. I see him being a player as the years go by. I think in time, when he finds his purpose, he will find his game.
Okay.
I will directly oppose you on Gronk.
I'm sure you will.
Yes, because it is one of my greater loves in life to beat up on the Patriots.
What
And
happened this year?
yeah. At any rate, I'm going to talk a little bit about Jimmy Graham.
Good choice.
And now your stats speak for themselves, and there's no denying that Gronkowski is an exceptional tight end. But Jimmy Graham puts up some pretty impressive numbers himself. As a fifth-year player in New Orleans, he's got 48 career touchdowns to your 51. We're running neck and neck there. 7 already this season. He has one career fumble.
Okay, one for you, one for me.
And he just seems to continuously get better. He had second most touchdowns for a tight end last year, not behind Gronkowski. I'm trying to remember who had the first most touchdowns for a tight end last year. I should have written that down. But nonetheless, Jimmy Graham had the second most touchdowns for a tight end last season, and I think you're going to see a lot more of him this week because Brandon Cooks has gone down for New Orleans last week with a thumb injury. So I think Graham's role is going to be far more significant this season, and he's going to be able to put up numbers on par with your Gronk. Okay. Gronk, paper, scissors. I'm calling him the South's Jimmy G. Ha ha!
Yeah.
Did I mention that Gronk is the J.J. Watt of offensive side of the ball?
We're mixing metaphors like a Cuisinart over here.
J.J. Watt.
We're mixing metaphors like a Cuisinart. Too many players. Oh, okay. Cats and dogs living together. You got an honorable mention. I'm going to give a little honorable mention love to the Browns. However, I'm going to put a little star beside it because we haven't got to see a lot from him this season. Namely, Jordan Cameron, a 4th-round pick for the Browns in 2011. He had a very breakout year last year. and due to that was drafted by 86% of people for fantasy this year. He put up really significant numbers for the Browns. And as the Browns were moving forward with Hoyer and then starting to think about Manziel, who has been a non-issue, but nonetheless, it looked like Cameron was going to be a go-to guy for the Browns. He had his third concussion in 3 seasons in week 8 and has yet to see the field or suit up since. There was some kind of rumors in the back office that he might suit up this week. The Browns would have the big threat of Josh Gordon being back and Jordan Cameron. He is not, well, the final word isn't in. Friday practice has not taken place in Cleveland yet. He did not suit up yesterday. I say he's probably still out. You don't want to rush it with concussion injuries, especially as that's come into light in the NFL recently with the long-term effects of concussion injuries. So, but I'd still like to give an honorable mention, somebody to keep an eye on if he becomes healthy again this season or even next season, that he can be an up-and-comer for promising tight end.
Phil?
Very cool. Yeah, to mimic some things that Joel had mentioned earlier on in the process of the Mike Ditka kind of changing the position, and actually a little bit of what David mentioned about Belichick and the dual-headed tight end assault that they have had up there.
Double whammy. Yes.
Exactly, have had up there in New England. Philadelphia is doing a bit of a similar situation there. We have a second-year player, Zach Ertz, has had a really good 2 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles under the Chip Kelly system. It's a bit interesting to play under the Chip Kelly system because you have so many different targets and so many different looks and that type of thing. So the numbers aren't quite there yet, but at the same time, they're moving forward. And yeah, we're kind of moving in this modern day NFL tight end dual-headed monster thing going on there. As far as the current best tight end in the league, I really hate to agree with my boy Dave, but at the same time, the guy really is an absolute beast. And I love Jimmy Graham as well, obviously, super fantastic.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the support that Gronk does.
And if you're talking about Gronk, another thing that I like, not only is he a tight end, but he loves to chase tight ends in the off-season, photograph with porn stars and other types of things. I mean,
See
it's
where that metaphor
absolutely ridiculous. It's, he's just dynamic on the field, dynamic off the field. Wow, what's there to say?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna weigh in on the Gronk versus Graham thing, and I'm gonna hedge my bets a little bit here. I hate to say, but that's where we're at. I know it is. I think Gronk is probably the if he's not the more talented, because I think they're right about the same on the talent level. I think if I had to have one for the rest of this season, I would go with Gronk. If I had to go one for the rest of his career, I'd take Jimmy Graham. And that's because I think Graham's a little more durable than Gronk.
Yeah,
I think Gronk gets more play per game on average and stuff, but then when you miss an entire season here and there, the average comes back and they end up in about the same place. I think Graham may be the one to beat the career statistics of Tony Gonzalez when it's all said and done, whereas Gronk might be a little more of a shooting star that tapers off and has to
injuries
quit
take that
early.
toll, yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe this is just an aberration and his injuries are done and he's the guy that goes on to play every game from here on out, but I don't believe it. For me as an up-and-comer, I'm going to talk another person talking about their hometown boy, Kansas City's Travis Kelce. He was actually drafted in 2013, missed an entire season due to injury. So this is his first year, even though he's not a rookie. So far, he's got 475 yards and 4 touchdowns through the first 10 games, not counting last night's debacle in Oakland. And more importantly, he's the type of guy that's getting the big catches, the tough yards after the catch. And he's putting up these numbers in what is very much a run-first offense with Jamal Charles in Kansas City. In fact, the entire Kansas City wideout core still does not have a touchdown catch. So, for somebody to be catching 4 touchdowns is fairly impressive there.
You don't want to mention Miami's Antonio Fasano.
Yeah, that was my next take. Also, do want to say for just a moment, we haven't mentioned Antonio Gates at all in this. He was the heir apparent to Tony Gonzalez many years ago before Gonzalez lapped him by staying healthy, and Antonio Gates went under the knife year in and year out for his toe or his foot or his knee or his shoulder or whatever it was at any given moment.
Pick an injury, any injury.
So, but still, career-wise, I could see him ending up in the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done.
You got to give a hats off also to Jason Witten of the Dallas
Jason
Cowboys.
Witten, yeah.
Yeah,
Another one of those
sure.
block first tight ends
Yeah.
who picks up some good yards.
Knows
but-
his role.
Yeah.
But I guess it was very interesting listening to you, Wayne, Jimmy Graham, Gronkowski. I'd say neither of them. You know, it is Julius Thomas.
Which is the
Denver.
boldest of the bold.
Denver Broncos Julius Thomas. He will step in Shannon Sharp's footsteps. You know, he's in his 4th year now in the NFL. He is 26 years old, basically in his prime. He is 6'3" tall, so he's losing the battle on 2 inches on Gronkowski, I think, weighing 250 pounds, exactly where you should be. Now, in college, he played basketball, and only in his last year in college, he switched to American football. Unfortunately, in his first 2 seasons, he was injured. He didn't play in 2011 and 2012. But in 2013, he was the absolute stud. You know, he had 12 touchdowns in 2013, and in yards and receptions, he finished amongst the top 10, you know, and that is combined with receivers and tight ends. And the 12 touchdowns made him the 3rd best in the league in 2013. Now in 2014, he's already standing at 12 touchdowns. Now, do your maths, you know, Jimmy Graham,
7.
48 touchdowns in 4 years. Julius Thomas, 24 by now in 2 years. So we're getting close there.
Excuse me, what else is Denver going to do? They don't run the ball, so.
Come on. Not
all I do is
right
run
now.
the ball.
Not right
They
now.
got 4 guys that can throw. They haven't got a running back. Of course the guy's going to have great numbers.
It will
It's a matter
also
of-
Oh, they have brilliant receivers.
it will also be very interesting though to see how his career stats look when he doesn't have Peyton Manning throwing him the ball.
Exactly.
So
If he
true.
can keep it up when they pull in
Absolutely.
their next quarterback, then he'll be more in the discussion. But of course, the same goes true for Gronkowski and
Jimmy G will step up to
Yeah.
the plate.
Jimmy G, of course. We'll see if Jimmy G is able to keep Gronk in the upper echelon, and if whoever supplants
And
Drew
mine-
Brees
yeah.
is able to
Can
do
keep
it in New Orleans.
his Jimmy G in. It's getting
Fair
very
enough.
cyclical.
All right, there's just one more tight end that I'd like to mention because to me he's probably the most overseen and the guy who is not mentioned at all. That is Greg Olsen from the Carolina Panthers these days. And he used to start in Chicago where he was an average tight end. He was more often used as a blocker, as a receiver. But ever since he switched to Carolina, he's in his 3rd year with Carolina now. And last year he had fantastic numbers. He had over 800 yards receiving. And this season he's already standing at 719, and that is 2nd best behind Rob Gronkowski so far. So I'd like to give him a bit of credit here.
All right, so that's our discussion on tight ends. We'll pick another position and hit you up with something similar next week. See how that goes. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and head to a short break. When we get back, we'll talk about next week's games. See you soon. And we're back with the wave episode of the touchdown, apparently. Second half, I guess we should first, unfortunately, have to talk about last week's games and how our picks went, which is not very well.
Excuse me.
Other than Dave. Dave went 4-2. The rest of us went 2-4. Dave had New England correctly. The rest of us picked Indianapolis. We all picked Cleveland to beat Houston.
Idiots.
Whether or not it was a sympathy vote for Katie, it's hard to say, but we all picked wrong. We all picked Green Bay correctly, luckily. Wait. Somebody chose the Philadelphia Eagles to win at Green Bay and may have been incorrect.
I'm
Still in shell shock on that one. We all got KC right except for Katie, who actually chose a tie to happen between Seattle and Kansas City.
You know what? And that was still in the mix for quite some time.
It was a possibility. We all had Detroit to win at Arizona except for Dave.
Wow.
And Cincinnati was our one split. Joel and Dave, myself, we both had New Orleans to win, while Katie and Chris had Cincinnati to win. So anyway, Mark was the real winner by not showing up. He picked all these tough games.
undefeated if you don't have to pick.
so
So.
that was the way to go apparently last week. So this week, the upcoming games, we're going to kick it off. We're going to let Dave weigh in with his usual New England at Detroit.
What can I say, ladies and germs? New England right now is the team in the AFC. At least we can all agree about this, can't we? They just embarrassed the Broncos and just went into Indianapolis and marched all over Andrew Luck and his Go team. Detroit coming into New England. First of all, the weather doesn't look all that good in Foxborough this weekend. Plus for the Patriots, it's tough to win in New England. It really is. It's just hard to win in New England. Tom Brady is on a roll. He's up for MVP once again. Got the Gronk. Got the new shades of gray. Jonas Gray comes out from the practice squad 2 weeks ago. Runs for 201 yards and scores 4 touchdowns. I mean, nobody knew this guy 2 weeks ago. Not only that, we just picked up, help me here, Chris.
LeGarrette, I love to smoke.
The Blunt.
Yes.
Just picked up from waivers. Typical move by Belichick. I see this game not being close at all. I think New England wins by double digits for sure.
No. I'm just gonna go with no. I just go against you on principle. It's interesting, and I would pick. I think I would even pick yesterday's Raiders against you.
To mention this, keep your eye out for Tim Wright, the other tight end for the New
So
England
wrong
Patriots.
he's right.
So wrong, he's right. I say that Detroit bounces back from the loss against the Cards. That is a tough defense, and even in Foxborough, I think Calvin
Megatron?
Johnson. I want you love
Sorry.
saying it. I'm sorry. I didn't give you appropriate.
Man,
I
sorry.
say he's picking up speed. They've got an amazing
Yeah.
set of receivers and rushers. I say they knock off the Pats at home.
But amazingly, the Pats are winning it on defense. Teams like the Broncos and Indianapolis cannot throw to their secondary. Revis Island is there to stay.
Who could possibly put up points against the Pats?
Exactly.
I think Kansas City.
I'm going to ride that as long as I can. I'm just saying.
Gotcha.
Rather bring that up than last night's game. So
Exactly.
Listen, I'm tired of going against the Pats. You picked up another running back as well. They've got a couple big wins over big teams. Sorry to have to do it, but I go with the Patriots in this game.
Good man.
every time I have to pick Detroit, win or lose, I pick wrong. Bad news, Dave. I'm going with New England this week.
Oh, yeah.
The curse is upon you.
The curse may be upon you. This could be the one. So yeah, I see New England going in. I see them winning big. Detroit, to me, is a bit of a smoke and mirrors team, and they find a way to win, but I'm not entirely sure how. And I think New England's going to expose them.
All right, Joel just reassured me in my pick. I know you guys know I love the Dolphins, and they need a loss by the Patriots, so I go with Detroit.
Thank you, Mark. So some points agree.
It's well split up.
There you go. Okay, next on the agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about Arizona at Seattle, which I think is the game of the week because in addition to being a couple of big teams, you've got the divisional rivalry thing going on there. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Arizona well out in front. They can afford to lose this game and still be in solid control of the division. Seattle, however, just took a tough loss at Kansas City, and suddenly they are mathematically sitting behind the wild card spot, so they would not make the playoffs if they ended today. Seattle looked great on the ground last week in Kansas City. Got to give it up. Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson, both of them picking up big yards in chunks. Not so much through the air. Questionable play calling in this game against Kansas City, especially whenever they decided came up to fourth down. They seem to lose their minds a little bit and call the thing that you probably don't want to call. So, whereas Arizona at home, they looked okay. They beat Detroit, again, a team that I'm not completely sold on, but they did, and Detroit has the wins to back it up this year. So it was a solid win. I'm just not completely sold on Drew Stanton yet. I think he's a backup who's playing first string, and that's all he's going to be. I don't think he's going to go out and take over the role. I don't think he's going to suddenly be the one in the free agent market this season. I think he's a guy that's filling in, and I think he's going to be fine, and they'll keep the game close. Arizona's got a great defense, and they're going to keep the game close, but when it's all said and done, I think at home, Seattle is going to take this game that they absolutely have to stay in the wild card hunt, and that's the way it's going to play out this week.
Yeah, I don't know really what to say. I watched a lot of Arizona games this season, and from what I saw, they haven't convinced me yet that they are that great team like the record shows. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't give it to them. I have to go with Seattle because Super Bowl winners last year, they need that win. They'll take it. Seattle will win.
Yeah, it's interesting. For a team that's 9-1, we continue to basically trash on the Cardinals. I am on the bandwagon to continue to trash on the Cardinals here. As we said, listen, it's a way. When is it going to be a time when Drew Stanton and his inexperience and kind of haphazardness in the quarterback position? Larry Fitzgerald's banged up, not sure if he's going to play. I'm picking Seattle at home.
But just enlighten me, on why the Arizona Cardinals are standing 9-1. I just can't see it.
Yeah,
what is it? Is it
hard to say.
Is it the defense?
I
don't know.
Coaching. I think coaching's a big part.
Maybe.
They've got a great coach.
I don't have so much more to add. I think Seattle's tough to beat at home, and I think they'll bounce back because they need to, as you stated, and Arizona could afford the loss. I take Seattle at home as well.
Well, I'm going to give you guys a chance to catch up this week. Maybe. I'm going to go with Arizona, surprisingly enough. I think their defense has brought them to a 9-1 record to begin with. People always talk about the offense, but I think the defense is going to go in there and show up the defense of 2013. I see Arizona walking away with this, a close one. Seattle, whether they're playing in Seattle or in Honolulu, it doesn't matter. I think the Cardinals will win this game.
Wow. Speaking to it, I think the reason Arizona is besides coaching, the reason that they're so far up is that while they don't have any one portion of their team that you look at and just say, okay, that's the best in the league. They're not the best rushing team. They're not the best passing team. They're not the best defense. But they don't have any one glaring weakness either. They do really well. They're top 10 in basically everything. And there aren't a lot of teams that say that nowadays. So I think that's the big thing is they've just got consistency across the board. They're well balanced. And they've got a good coach who doesn't let them go out and just completely lay an egg. So I think it'll be close.
You got Arizona?
No, I've still got Seattle.
I only got Arizona.
You're the only one.
You're giving us a chance to catch up.
That's
Appreciate it.
You throw us a bone there, Dave. Thank you.
Okay, Mark. Miami at Denver.
Miami at Denver, exactly. Now, I don't want to go into too many stats and talk too much about it. Let's talk about key advantages. Definitely for the Broncos, they're hosting a team that is used to humidity, high temperatures, playing at sea level, exactly the opposite in Denver. This is the biggest advantage for Denver. Miami has to avoid a couple of errors, and that is, like I mentioned often, Ryan Tannehill, his red zone interceptions, and the defense has to put pressure on Peyton Manning. He's got Demaryius Thomas, who's currently best wide receiver in stats in the league so far, and the cornerbacks have to shut him out. Then I think it's possible for Miami to win. As usual, the Dolphins will trail at halftime, but they'll come back. Probably they'll take Denver to overtime, but I think they win it there since the Broncos are a wounded stud to me at the moment, and it's time for Miami to have a feast and feed on some horse Leberkäse.
A nice local reference there.
Yeah.
Leberkäse. All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Boy, Peyton just didn't look good last week, did he? He's had some troubles. He's had some arm strength issues. Denver's not really got any running game to speak of. Their defense is suspect. I say the Broncos are going down like a virgin on prom night. It's going to be one of those games that you expect to happen, and They
Are you
don't do it.
Are you allowed to say that
Thanks,
on
man.
television?
What,
We're not on
Promenade?
television.
Oh,
We can say whatever
Yes.
the F we want to. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, listen, I even said about in the opening here that Denver's on the way down. Gosh, I don't know. At the same time, I think they steadied themselves this week. Be interesting to see who actually is going to be playing for Denver this week. But it is at Mile High, altitude, cold, home field advantage. I hate to say it, but I'm going with the Broncos.
Fair enough.
I think you've pretty much covered all the main talking points. I say weather wins out, and Manning bounces back. He's a veteran quarterback. Broncos at home.
Well, the only question is the Dolphins had three days more to prep that game. Since the
True,
game
does
was
it-
Thursday.
And you just took my point right there. The Dolphins are more risk. I don't, I'm a New England fan. I'm in the same division as my colleague here on the end in the yellow orange thingamadingy over there.
Colorblind there.
The only thing I like about the Dolphins, they got a red-headed cheerleader. You can see her every Sunday. Fantastic. Other than that, I don't like anything about the Dolphins.
There's
Other than
too much
Marino,
space.
respect.
Too
But
much space.
having 3 days off like this, Denver has absolutely no running game. Dolphins can stop the run, and they have a pretty decent secondary. I see Dolphins pulling out the upset. Close win, but I see the Dolphins winning this game because the Dolphins actually need to win it more, I think.
All right, love it when we get a nice split like this. Little discussion time. I'm not sure that's going to happen with our next matchup, though. Let's hear what Chris can do to convince us that the Giants have a chance at home against the Dallas Cowboys. Chris?
Yeah, you know, normally we probably wouldn't be featuring this game, but there's a lot of other good games, and it kind of makes a big drop off afterwards. I was thinking about what makes this matchup good, and here's what I got for you. Listen, it's the Cowboys at 7-3 going to New Jersey to face the New York Giants, who are a reverse record at 3-7. But at the same time, I find this game to be quite important for both teams. Listen, the Dallas Cowboys are fighting for the divisional lead in the NFC East. It's a divisional game. The Giants themselves, listen, they're probably out of it anyway, but from a realistic side of things, if they lose this week, it is done. The Giants, rather, have been absolutely horrible lately. They've lost their last 5 games. Granted, it's been against some fairly good teams, Philadelphia, Dallas, Indianapolis, Seattle, and San Francisco. So they've played some pretty good teams, but when you lose all 5 of them, you basically have nothing really to show for you. They're getting Rashard Jennings back this week. Maybe that puts a little bit of an additional rushing into their arsenal again. They struggled really with Andre Williams, rookie. They thought he was going to come back and really put that charge. He's a big back, but he really kind of ran a little scared from my side of things if you watch the film. The other big thing from my side of things is if the Giants continue to play poorly this season, what is going to happen with Tom Coughlin at the end of the season? Last year they were 7-9. This year they're 3-7. I can't believe it. The guy's won 2 Super Bowls. He's been there for 11 seasons now, but the ups and downs and the drama in New York is just almost too much to take. So I think this is a really big game for the Giants this week, and I think they'll actually do pretty well. The big hole in the Giants' arsenal is their rushing defense. They are second to last in rushing yards given up each game, and the Cowboys are the second most rushing yards behind your boy, DeMarco Murray, and even really their secondary running backs as well. In the end, I really wish I could say the fact that they're playing in New Jersey, home field advantage, and the fact that they really need this game, that is the Giants, will put the Giants over the top. And I really hate rooting for the Dallas Cowboys for obvious reasons, but I'm going to do it. I'm picking the Dallas Cowboys in this football game.
I think it's a smart move. I can't fathom that Eli Manning does some kind of miraculous anything given this season. I said the boy does have 2 Super Bowl rings, but not with this team. And no, they're not going to be able to stop Murray. Not a chance.
I'm on with you on this one, Chris and Katie. No running defense. One of the best running backs playing the game right now. I think Dallas just marches right over him.
I'm going to wimp out and pick Dallas as well, although I absolutely can see it going the other way. Having just watched a similar matchup last night, you go on the road against a divisional opponent, and it's just always a thing. It's always hard to win on the road against teams that know you that well. And especially when you've got everything to lose and they've got nothing to lose, it wouldn't blow my mind at all to see the Giants rise up and win this game, much as the Redskins beat the Cowboys a few weeks back. It's just something different when you're playing the guys that you know. However, I got no faith in Eli this year. I got no faith in Tom, and I think they're losing that team a little bit. If they do win, it'll be at the hands of rookie Odell Beckham, wide receiver, and maybe a little bit of Rashad Jennings. If they can get those guys going, then it'll make for an interesting game. But
Joel,
we'll
the
see.
good thing about this football matchup as well is that when the Dallas Cowboys win this football game, they're going to end up with 8 wins.
And
As you
If you
talked
lose
about
out, yeah.
earlier in this season, they'll end 8-8. They got the Eagles 2 times. That gives us 2 more wins. Life is good.
Yeah.
Go Cowboys this
No,
week.
Of course, they'll have to lose out at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of interesting things already mentioned. The Dallas Cowboys so good at home, so bad on the road. Plus that key thing that DeMarco Murray is the leading rusher. And there's one comparison. Every time we have such a thing like a leading rusher going against such a bad defense, we just had it yesterday with Jamal Charles going against a really bad defense. All of a sudden, everything is turning upside down, and actually the underdogs wins. So I pick New York Giants.
I like it.
Wow.
I like it.
Somebody
There
had
we
the
go.
cojones to do it.
Very nice.
All right. Katie got the final game of the week with Baltimore, New Orleans.
Yeah, we also have a reverse of wins and losses this week with Baltimore at 6-4 and New Orleans at 4-6. And this game, anything could happen in this game right now. I put a curse on New Orleans a couple of weeks ago, I believe, by saying that New Orleans pretty much unstoppable in the Superdome. They went on to lose 2 straight in the Superdome, and they're going to host Baltimore this week at home. Clearly, they are stoppable at home, and I believe Baltimore might just have the power to stop them. The defensive edge goes to Baltimore across the board. I think Baltimore's sitting in the top 10 all defensive statistics, whereas the Saints are pretty much the bottom in every defensive column. You're going to have to watch out for Brees and my boy Graham that we talked about earlier, Gresham as well. The Saints would have to do a lot of work on the ground and in the air to keep things moving because they're certainly not going to stop Flacco, I don't think. And I'm looking for Flacco and Forsett to put up a lot of points. I can see it going either way, but I say, as painful as it is, Baltimore wins.
Now, New Orleans is at Baltimore.
No, it's at New Orleans.
It's at New Orleans.
Good. That being said, cannot see New Orleans losing 3 games at home. I just can't see it, whether they're playing the Packers or the Patriots. Eventually, one of these times, you're going to see Brees, future Hall of Famer, we can probably agree on this, step it up a notch. And Sean Payton, I do not like this guy at all, but I just don't see New Orleans losing 3 at home, and I say they win this game and shut down Flacco.
If they turn Flacco into Sacco, I will be totally okay.
Yeah, you
but
should be all for this.
I'm
I'm
not-
rooting against one of your nemesis.
I know.
I think the
I-
Saints
that's
win
why-
this one. I
did you
just
s-
don't see them losing 3 at
How
home.
reluctantly I said Baltimore wins.
Yeah.
Don't
Drag
you
it
still have
down.
the
I got
Saints?
the Saints.
You still have the Saints in the Super Bowl, though, don't you?
The Aints.
I think
Technically,
he
he
does.
does. He doesn't get a
Yes.
chance to reverse that one until we get to playoff time, and then he can.
So-
Yes, I do. That's one of the reasons I'm picking him. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Yeah, the Saints are really mystery to me this year.
Exactly.
I mean, they've established a little bit of the run game this season with Ingram, not Gresham. We continue to call
Why
him
do I
Gresham,
keep
but it's
calling
cool.
him
We like that.
Gresham? I'm sorry,
And
Cincinnati.
I mean, as we've talked about, it's just unbelievable about the fact that they can't win games at the Superdome. They got Brandon Cooks out this week with the broken thumb, or actually the rest of the season. But I think they spread the ball around enough anyway. I can't really say why I think, other than the fact that I just feel like they're due to win a game at home.
Exactly.
So I picked New Orleans in this football game.
What he said. Mark?
Well, actually, if I weigh the pros and cons of each team, my scale is flat even. So I go with the saying, 3rd time lucky, Drew Brees, you win the game.
Wow. Not only was Katie bold enough to pick Baltimore on the road, but she was the only one. Wow.
I like it.
Let's
It's
see.
yeah.
See,
like
I mean, it does nothing for me in my
It's
league,
very
but
likely to happen, but
Yeah.
I just don't want it.
Okay, well, I think that about wraps us up for this week. Everybody get a chance to see our little helmets here that Mark got us.
thanks,
Yeah.
Mark.
Very spiffy. And that's going to do it. So thanks for joining us again, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.
Wait a minute.